Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I am glad you found me. I hope you like what you see today, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. Today's painting is a little bit of an adventure. I didn't think it was going to turn out the way it did at all. My intention was to recreate something similar to what I did last week. So I started out this time wetting my paper on the back first, and it was curling up a little bit in the beginning of the video if you saw that, but as I was spraying water on the front, it then quickly straightened out again, and that definitely made it much easier for me to begin putting down my watercolors. I am still working with the hahnemuhle watercolor paper, which is a 140-pound cold pressed paper. I didn't show that in the beginning, and I usually do, but I had a lot going on this week. There's a lot of started and stopped projects that just didn't go quite somewhere. So in the end, I just kept starting, and instead of showing everything in the beginning, I must have forgotten to do that today. I am also working with the Daniel Smith watercolors. If you were here last week and the week before, you would have seen me either swatch them or start painting with the new colors and trying them out. I really like the colors that I've picked, but today I wanted to venture out a little bit and combine a few more colors together and see how they work. So that's exactly what I am doing here. Because I am using different colors and I have quite a bit of water on the paper, I was worried that once I put the cling wrap on top, areas would muddy up. So I was keeping my fingers crossed and hoping for the best. So this is what it looks like with the cling wrap on, and now I'm just gonna let it dry. I managed to get a good background. I liked how the colors mixed on the paper, and I liked the design it gave me. My plan was to outline things that I could see, and I thought I was going with the same kind of design again that I did last time, but immediately I saw butterflies, and so I am very cautiously outlining them, and I'm using the watercolor pencils because I wasn't quite sure how it would turn out, and I didn't want to mess up the outline, so I felt a little bit more comfortable going in with the pencils instead of a brush. I apologize for having to speed up the footage so fast, but this took quite a while. There was a lot of looking at it and outlining and trying to figure out which way they would face, and I ended up with about 2 hours of footage, which is a lot more than what I usually work with. So I was worried this video was going to be too long. So I had to cut out quite a few things, and I also had to unfortunately speed it up a little bit. It's just a process that is much easier to follow when you speed it up as well, because this just takes so long to get the shapes right and figure out where everything is situated. Along with the butterflies, I also saw leaf shapes. So I wanted to try and highlight those as well. And I started out with smaller ones up top, but as I was looking at the page below the butterflies, I saw bigger ones too. And at first I wasn't sure whether I should go with the bigger ones, but I really didn't see another way to do it. At least at that moment I didn't, and so I just ran with it. And sometimes I just have to do that, because when you stare at a background for too long, things just start to blur together. This one here was quite an interesting structure. At first, to me, it looked like a moth, perhaps, but I changed my mind later on because I already had the butterflies and I didn't think it would fit. So I stopped working on that and I continued working on the leaves instead. I came back to the shape a little bit later on and I decided to turn it into a flower. And after looking at it a little bit more, it reminded me of a Black-Eyed Susan a little bit, and so that's what I decided to go with. I would have liked to add more flowers into this painting, but it's hard for me to force a shape into existence when I don't see it, if that makes sense. So I decided to leave it at that and just stick with the different kinds of leaves instead. As you can tell, I have switched to the brush now. Once I was done with the butterflies and I had moved on to the bigger shapes, it was a lot easier to use the brush, and so that's what I ended up using in the end, and it worked really well. Alongside those leaves, even more butterfly shapes started to emerge for me, and I really enjoyed how they are fluttering in different directions. I really loved how the colors had mixed together in this leaf here, and so I wanted to highlight those different color variations a little bit more by bringing in more of the watercolors. And I also am starting to add some of the veining into the leaves as well. I was contemplating on what to do inside the bigger leaf shapes. I really liked how the other leaf turned out, and so I decided instead of doodling on top of them to continue intensifying the colors a little bit more and also bring out those different shapes. And I like it, but I'm not thrilled about it. I wish there was more color variation in those bigger leaves. It just felt a little bit too monochrome for me and too pink. But I didn't really know how else to fix it, and so I just left it. I haven't worked in this style for a long time. If you go way back on my channel and you look at the very first few videos that I posted back then, I did something like this in acrylics, and I really enjoyed the process, but I had never done it, or shouldn't say never. I probably have done it with watercolor before, but it must have been a long time ago too. So even though I enjoy this process, I am not sure at this moment if this is something that will stick. You could say I'm very much in a style hopper era at the moment, where I can't seem to want to settle for a certain style. I know I have done certain things for a while, but every now and then I get bored and I want to keep exploring, because I don't really want to tie myself down to a certain style. Not yet. I don't think I'm quite there yet. There's so much to discover and so much to try out that it would be silly of me to try and just stick with one style. But I'm sure that if and when I find something that fits well with me, I will keep exploring it and keep learning that way. But until then, I think I will very much welcome exploring and trying out new things. I still wasn't quite happy with how those leaves turned out, so I thought maybe I would bring in some colored pencils and bring in some texture this way. Again, I am not excited about how it turned out, but it's okay. Also, I think because that bottom section was a little bit too monochrome, I wanted to make sure that different pieces would stand out enough. They kind of all blended together, which is fine, but I was really hoping that they would stand out a little bit more, and I managed to get a little bit of shading underneath it, but again, it just wasn't quite what I was looking for. And so I was hoping by bringing in some doodles into the background, it would lift up those leaves and the butterflies a little bit more. But I think I might have overdone it with the different styles. I probably should have stuck with just one or two doodle styles. I just feel like it got a little bit too busy. It definitely helped with the contrasts, and I was happy about that. But in the end, I just wasn't happy with how everything tied together. I have to come to terms that not everything I create I'm gonna end up loving. And that is just a fact. What I will say though is this was a great practice to stimulate my brain and make it work a little bit different than I have done in the past. I also feel a little bit lost. I'm trying to keep exploring and working with the knowledge that I have acquired over the past 2 years, but it's also taking me a little bit by surprise that it feels like with every style that I'm trying, I have to start new. I don't know if you all feel like that as well, but that is something that I have noticed this week, because I am trying so hard to do different things and I keep falling back into old habits. Not that that's a bad thing, but I feel like it's preventing me from exploring other things, and I haven't quite figured out what those other things are going to be. So it's gonna be interesting from here on out to see what else I will create in the meantime. I am thinking it might be helpful to start a sketchbook and just start putting things into the sketchbook as they appear in my brain. I am not much of a sketchbook artist, if you haven't noticed. I don't have many sketchbooks that I use for that purpose, and I'm starting to think that maybe I should do that, and that it might help me figure out things without having to put the pressure on myself to create paintings every single week. You know what I mean? So I hope you keep coming back to see what I am coming up with every week, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. It was a little bit a different one, but I hope you as well will continue exploring and growing and learning while creating art. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you made it all the way to the end, why don't you leave me a butterfly emoji in the comments? I will see you next week.